I am a psychologist who specializes in family estrangement, and I'm also an estranged adult child. So, when I talk about the decision to distance yourself from family, I am not talking about it from a safe academic distance. I know what it is like to love people and still realize that being close to them is costing you just too much. I know what it's like to lie awake at night, replaying conversations, wondering whether you're cruel, whether you're overreacting, whether you're the problem. I know what it's like to feel that stomach drop when a message comes through, not because anything dramatic has happened, yeah, at least, but because your body has already learned what contact can cost. And if you clicked on this video, my guess is that something in you already knows this relationship is not simply difficult. Something in you is starting to wonder whether it is damaging. That is a frightening thing to admit because when the people hurting you are family, the world does not usually ask what happened to you. It asks why you cannot just forgive, why you cannot just move on, and why you cannot just be the bigger person. For those of you who are new here, I'm a chartered counselling psychologist and psychotherapist, and I specialise in working with family estrangement. And I've spent over a decade working with families, relational trauma, and the painful question of whether repair is still possible. But family estrangement is not a side interest for me. It was the subject of my doctoral research. It is a major part of my clinical work, and it is my lived experience. So this video is not about telling you to cut off people from your lives. It is not about demonizing parents or adult children, siblings, partners, or anyone else in the family system. It's about helping you recognize when the cost of staying close has become too high. So today I'm going to walk you through 5 signs that it may be time to take distance from family. Not necessarily forever, not necessarily dramatically, but enough distance to stop abandoning yourself in order to keep the relationship alive. And by the end of this video, I want you to have a clearer way of thinking about the questions so many estranged adult children carry in private. Am I being too harsh? Or have I finally reached the point where protecting myself is necessary? But before we get into the 5 signs, we need to talk about the thing that keeps so many people trapped. Shame. Shame is present on every side of estrangement. Adult children feel shame for needing distance. Parents feel shame that the relationship is broken down. Siblings feel shame for taking sides or not taking sides. Partners feel shame because they can't fix it. And shame is powerful because it makes you ask the wrong question. It just shows up everywhere. It makes you ask, what will people think of me? But the more honest question is, what is this relationship doing to me? So let me just give you a real example. As a child, Emily learned very, very early that love could just disappear, that adults could choose other adults over her, and that her fear was often treated as an inconvenience rather than a signal that she needed comfort. One parent vanished from her life, another stayed close enough to criticize, but not close enough to protect her. There were moments of kindness, but they were mixed with chaos or fear and neglect. As she grew up, Sarah became very good at reading the room. She knew when to be quiet. She knew when not to ask for too much. She knew how to make herself smaller so that other people didn't explode or collapse or withdraw or make her feel guilty. Then, as an adult, she starts to say no. She stops answering every message immediately. She stops explaining herself to people who never really listen. She stops walking into family situations that leave her shaking on the drive home. And suddenly the story becomes Sarah is cold, Sarah is difficult, Sarah has changed, Sarah is breaking the family. But privately, Sarah thinks something very different. Everyone keeps asking, when am I going to fix this? But nobody ever asks what it cost me to stay. That is the line I want you to hold on to as we go through these 5 signs, because taking distance usually does not begin with hatred. It begins with exhaustion. It begins when your body, your mind, and your spirit have been sending warning signals for years, and you finally stop dismissing them. So, Let us get into the 5 signs. Sign number 1. Your boundaries are treated as personal attacks. This is one of the clearest signs that a relationship may not be safe enough to stay close to. You make a reasonable request. Please call before coming over. Please do not comment on my body. Please do not speak to me like that in front of my children. Please do not bring up that subject at Christmas lunch, for example. And instead of the other person hearing the boundary, they hear rejection. Suddenly you are selfish, you are dramatic, you think you're better than everyone else, you're being influenced by your partner, your therapist, the internet, or whoever else can be blamed for the fact that you now have limits. So the boundary becomes the crime rather than the behavior that made the boundary necessary. And this puts you in an impossible position because either you abandon yourself to keep the peace or you hold your ground and pay for it emotionally. And that might look like rage. It might look like the silent treatment, or it might look like a long message telling you how hurtful you are. It might look like someone suddenly becoming fragile and wounded the moment you ask them to take responsibility. A boundary is not an attack. A boundary is information. It says, this is what I need in order to stay in relationship with you without losing myself. And if every boundary you set is punished, mocked, or reframed as cruelty, that is not just a disagreement. That is a refusal to recognize your right to have needs at all. And that is sign number 1. Sign number 2, you feel like you disappear around them. So this one can be harder to name because from the outside, everything might look fine. You still go to the family lunch, you still send the birthday message, you still smile in the photographs, but inside you're not really there. You're performing, you're monitoring your tone, your face, your opinions, your laugh, look, your clothing, your parenting, your partner, your children, your appetite, your silence. The list goes on. You're calculating what version of you will cause the least trouble. Maybe you don't mention the good news because someone will minimize it. Maybe you don't mention the hard thing because someone will use it against you later. Maybe you don't correct the lie because you know the fallout will be worse than the lie itself. Maybe you leave the room and realize your shoulders have been up around your ears for 3 hours. A lot of people, especially those of us who are neurodivergent or who grew up in unpredictable homes, this can feel horribly familiar. You learned very early that the safest version of you was this edited version, which is the agreeable one, the quiet one, the useful one, the one who doesn't need too much, but a relationship that only works when you disappear is not a healthy relationship. It's a role. And if you've been playing that role for so long that you barely know who you are when you're not performing, distance may be necessary, not as a punishment, but as a recovery. And that's sign number 2. So sign number 3 then. The relationship only works when you play your assigned role. So every family has roles. There might be the responsible one, the difficult one, the sensitive one, the selfish one, the peacemaker, the problem, the golden child, the one everyone relies on. So you get the idea. Roles are not always spoken out loud either, but everyone knows what their role is. And in an unhealthy family system, the relationship often depends on you staying in your role. So if you're the responsible one, people may love you most when you are useful. If you're the peacemaker, people may praise you only when you smooth things over, but resent you when you tell the truth. If you're the problem, even your reasonable feelings can be treated as evidence that you're unstable or selfish or dramatic. If you're the sensitive one, then pain becomes your personality rather than a response to what happened. This is why growth can be so threatening to families, because if you go to therapy, you become clearer, you stop explaining yourself. You stop saying yes when your whole body is saying no. And instead of people saying, I'm glad you're taking care of yourself, they say, you've changed. And sometimes what they really mean is, you've stopped being easy to control. This doesn't mean the other person is sitting there like plotting like a villain. Most family systems are not that conscious, to be honest, but the impact is still real. If acceptance is only available when you're compliant, helpful, silent, or small, then you're not being loved as a whole person. You're being rewarded for staying in position. Sign number 4, then. You have become the only person doing that repair work. This is usually the sign that brings the most grief, because by the time someone is seriously considering distance, they have usually tried everything or a lot of things. You've tried explaining it calmly, you've tried writing the careful message where every sentence is softened so that nobody can access, so that nobody can accuse you of being aggressive. You have tried calling at the right time, choosing the right words, waiting until things are less stressful, avoiding blame, using I statements, not you statements, sending articles suggesting therapy. God forbid. You've tried being closer, you've tried giving space, you've tried not caring, you've tried caring more, but you've tried becoming so reasonable that you kind of practically disappear from your own sentences and still nothing changes, or the conversation just goes in circles. And the apology, if it does come, has a but in the middle of it, which is kind of taking it away with the other hand. And the same thing happens again 2 weeks later, or the whole issue is reframed as your inability to let things go. Here is what I want you to hear. A relationship cannot be repaired by one person doing two people's work. It does not matter how emotionally intelligent you become. It does not matter how carefully you phrase it. It does not matter how much you understand their trauma, their childhood, their intentions, their limitations. Understanding someone is not the same as being safe with them. And if you are the only person showing up with honesty and reflection and a willingness to change, then at some point the question stops being, how do I fix this? The question becomes, how long am I going to keep hurting myself to fix something alone? Sign number 5, your body is starting to refuse what your mind keeps trying to justify. This one matters enormously because many people can intellectually explain why they should stay in contact. They're getting older. They had a hard life. They did their best. It's not always bad. Other people have it worse. It is family. And sometimes all of that can be true or partly true, and the relationship can still be harming you. Your body often knows this before your mind is ready to admit it. You see their name on your phone, your chest tightens, you get a migraine before a visit, can't sleep after a conversation, you feel shaky, foggy, or strangely numb after spending time together with them. You rehearse the visit for days before it happens and then recover for days afterwards. You notice that your anxiety, low mood, digestive symptoms, pain, exhaustion, or sense of dread all flare around contact. That information matters. Your body is not being dramatic, it's trying to protect you. And no, recognizing the impact on your health does not mean the other person is evil. People can cause harm without intending to. People can love you and still be unsafe for you. People can have their own trauma and still be responsible for how they treat you. But the reason matters and the impact matters too. And if contact is consistently making you unwell, that isn't something to minimize. Now, if several of these signs hit hard, you might feel both validated and maybe terrified at the same time. Perhaps validated because someone's finally naming what has been happening, or terrified because if this is true, it has consequences. Taking distance from family is not like muting someone or on social media. It affects birthdays, holidays, weddings, funerals, children, inheritance, family gossip, photographs, group chats, ordinary Tuesday afternoons. It can mean grieving someone who is still alive. It can mean being misunderstood by people who only hear one side of the story. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's easy, but distance is not one thing. It might mean fewer phone calls. It might mean no longer discussing certain topics. It might mean leaving when someone becomes insulting. It might mean only seeing someone in public or with support. It might mean a period of no contact while you recover enough to think clearly. And for some people, yes, it may mean long-term or permanent estrangement. the point is not to choose the most dramatic option. The point is to choose the level of distance that allows you to stay connected to yourself, because that is often what gets lost in these conversations. Everyone asks whether you're willing to repair the relationship, but far fewer people ask whether you're allowed to repair yourself, the relationship with yourself. So before you go, I just want to leave you with a different way of thinking about estrangement, because most people frame it as a failure of love, a failure of family, a failure of forgiveness. But sometimes distance is not a failure of the relationship. Sometimes it's the first honest acknowledgement of what the relationship actually is. Sometimes it's the moment you stop negotiating with reality. Sometimes it's the moment you stop calling self-betrayal loyalty. And sometimes progress doesn't look like the family finally understanding you. Sometimes progress looks like sleeping through the night. It looks like not checking your phone with dread. It looks like making a decision without hearing their voice in your head, or it looks like spending Christmas, a birthday, or a completely ordinary Sunday without bracing for impact of some sort. It could look like becoming someone you no longer have to abandon in order to be loved. If this helped you see your situation more clearly, tell me in the comments which of these signs landed the hardest. And if you know someone who's quietly wrestling with this decision, please share it with them, because sometimes the most healing thing isn't simply knowing you're not imagining it. And I want to leave you with just one question to think about. What does progress look like if reconciliation never happens?